Excitement is building for this month's Ontario Winter Games. Good evening and thank you for joining us, and we apologize for our delayed start. February is here, and that means the Ontario Winter Games are just a couple weeks away.
One of the highlights on opening day will, of course, be the opening ceremonies. Josh Morano attended an announcement on that today and joins us in studio to tell us what to expect. Josh?
Thanks, Riley. The details were revealed this afternoon at the Fort William Historical Park, where both sets of opening ceremonies will also take place. With local athletes in attendance at the announcement as well, there's a lot to look forward to for fans to come and cheer them on. Over 1,000 volunteers are preparing for the start of the Ontario Winter Games in Thunder Bay. The event kicks off on February 16th and features 13 different sports, including artistic swimming, curling, archery, and cross-country skiing. The games are expected to bring in over 1,300 people to the city, kicking off with the opening ceremonies announced Thursday afternoon. Games Chair Barry Stribe says he's excited for the event to get underway, and he recommends everyone come out to see what they have in store.
Encouraging the public to come early, right at 5 o'clock, so they can get in here, because the athletes are going to be paraded in at 6:30, and we want as many people here to cheer them on as they come in to the event.
We're lighting the cauldron, so we are bringing back the 2020 Special Olympics cauldron that was created here in Thunder Bay. So we're very excited about that part. And then we are going to be finishing off the entire night with a free concert from the Lockyer Boys.
With all the buzz, the event has seen some major setbacks, including the cancellation of 14 sports due to travel and cost concerns. Another ailment arising as the games approach is the weather Northwestern Ontario has seen. While cross-country skiing is the only event that would be affected, the warm weather and lack of snow is worrying for some of the organizers and athletes as well.
Yeah, it's a little bit concerning for sure, because, well, if it stays like this warm out, we might lose some of the snow, which obviously wouldn't be great for the races, but I'm going to hope it gets a bit colder.
We've got a week or so of maybe this mild weather, but you know, this is Thunder Bay, this is Northern Ontario. We're not expecting that to go right through the games, and we're not even expecting that to go just before the start. We're hoping, and I believe we're going to get the amount of snow we need for those outdoor sports. So, yeah, it's on our minds, and we'll deal with whatever we have to deal with.
Opening ceremonies for the games take place on February 16th at 6:30 p.m. and again on February 23rd, both at Fort William Historical Park. The games and events are all free to the general public. Josh Morano, TBT News.
1 week after a devastating fire leveled the school in Admatung, the First Nation is asking the federal government for $5.5 million.
Chief Solomon at Lucan says the money is required to address the most urgent education needs. Lee Noonan has the details.
The remote First Nation of Admatung is facing major challenges in getting their students back to class in the aftermath of the arson that left the local school in ruins. The First Nation is asking for $5.56 million from Indigenous Services Canada to address the immediate need for short-term infrastructure.
You're talking children that need to be in school, and every child has a right to be in school, and it's within treaty that they do whatever they can to make sure our children go to school.
The funding would cover the cost to set up a temporary school made up of 20 trailer units. Atlukan emphasizes the urgency of the application if they're to get those units set up by this September. And he's not optimistic they'll be able to take advantage of the ever shorter winter road season. They're expecting to need costly air transport.
First Nations don't have the finances to do that, but the government does. And if we can get them to commit to do that, we'd be on our way.
Earlier this week, Indigenous Services Minister Patty Haidu committed to supporting the First Nations plans and expediting their funding requests.
The chief has my word that the department will be there to make sure that it isn't the government of Canada that is in any way delaying the replacement of that school. We're all united in that this is an utmost emergency and an urgent priority for both the government of Canada and the community.
The goal is to have a temporary facility up and running by September so students will have somewhere to continue their studies while the longer-term work to build a permanent school continues. In the meantime, Atlukan says they have no facilities that would be suitable as a makeshift school for the remainder of this year. He's particularly concerned that some students will need to move out to Thunder Bay.
They're looking at bringing grade 9 students out here to finish their year because it's a crucial time.
For the elementary students, they're working on a plan to combine online and outdoor learning. Atlukan would like to see that plan in action by the end of the month, but the work is complicated and the kids could be waiting even longer. Lee Noonan, TBT News.
Thunder Bay Police continued to investigate a collision this past weekend that saw a rented moving truck smash into an apartment building operated by the District Social Services Board. Fortunately, no one was injured in the crash, which happened Sunday afternoon at Clark Towers on Regent Street. The vehicle somehow went out of control and broke through into a resident common room. 2 people were inside at the time, but on the opposite side of the room. A DSAB spokesperson described the damage as pretty extensive, but says there was no structural impact to any of the 114 apartment units in the 8-story complex. The common room will remain closed to tenants until it can be repaired. It's still unclear what led up to the collision. Police say no charges have been laid so far.
The Ontario Autism Coalition is urging the provincial government to investigate after a 7-year-old boy with autism wandered away from a school.
And that boy was wearing nothing but a t-shirt. Siobhan Morris has the story.
This stretch of road near Ajax Pickering Hospital is packed with terrifying what-ifs for Kareem and Neelam Rashid.
And every time we come down here now, it just brings that memory of our son dodging traffic in a snowstorm.
It was on January 9th, their son Zach, who has autism, slipped out of school. He's supposed to have dedicated support. Zach is only 7, outside in just a t-shirt and pants in the winter chill.
It's upsetting. It's every parent's nightmare.
Yuki Chan's neighbors spotted Zach running through this wooded pathway.
She just say, hey, I noticed there's a boy running down the pathway, and I think I noticed him from the previous incident.
An incident Zach's parents were never made aware of. This time, the Rashids were told he'd only been missing for 3 or 4 minutes. The boy's school in the top left of your screen. This is all the ground he covered that day. His parents and neighbors say it was more like at least a half hour he was in the cold. The women went outside to try and help the boy. By then, he was running across lanes of live traffic. Chan grabbed him and threw her coat on him.
He seems cold because when we found him, he was shaking and he's soaked from head to toe.
His parents weren't told any of this until he was safely back at school. The Durham District School Board says their immediate focus was on ensuring Zach's safety and that he had temporarily moved away from his support personnel.
Explaining to them why this is not okay for a 7-year-old boy to be unattended for 35 minutes.
For them to acknowledge that, something went wrong here today.
No parent should have to go through that.
Zach's parents believe they should have been called, police and EMS too.
We have protocols in place with the school. They are fully aware of what has to be followed as part of Zach's plan when events like this happen. That plan wasn't executed anywhere close to that.
Education Minister Stephen Lecce says what happened to Zach Rashid is unacceptable and should have never occurred. I have asked the board to provide a full account of the incident and to develop a plan to ensure this never happens to any student again. But the Ontario Autism Coalition and education workers say Queen's Park has a role to play too.
The money allocated by the government to school boards to hire workers allows only for minimal supports for students. This doesn't keep kids safe, and it doesn't lead to success.
Urging the government to spend more on special education in its spring budget to prevent a tragedy.
And that was Siobhan Morris reporting. The city of Thunder Bay has saved a lot of money for snow clearing this year.
The warm temperatures and the lack of snow have led to a roads division surplus of more than $1 million, but at least some of those savings will be needed for additional pothole repairs. Jaden Billick has more.
Over the past couple winter seasons, City Roads Division employees were pretty busy keeping our streets clean, salted, and safe. The past few months, however, have been a different story. The lack of snow has allowed the city to save money and fill their reserve fund for when the inevitable winter does come to fruition. Roads manager Ian Spoljarich says with less time focused on snow clearing, the staff have been directed to other duties.
We had a lot of snow last spring, so things were projecting to be negatively, but then we turned things around here with the low amount of snowfall in November and December, and currently we are projecting a $1.4 million surplus, which will go back to the winter control reserve fund. Crews are still busy doing other things, potholes, equipment repairs, stuff along those lines, and preparing for the winter to come.
The pothole problem has been a growing issue in Thunder Bay for quite some time. Fortunately, the road crews have had some extra time to try to catch up on all the craters. Spol Jarrett says although the recent weather has saved them money in snow plowing, the fluctuating warm and cold temperatures throughout the day are the perfect conditions for potholes to form.
So right now we're seeing milder temperatures during the day and that freezing over the night, which is causing some spring-like conditions in January and February. So we are seeing a little more potholes, but we do have staff out working hard filling those as quick as possible.
Spol Jarrett says their snow plowing crews enjoy what they do and are eager to get back out to plowing the city streets once again very soon. Jaden Billick, TBT News.
Well, this will likely come as no surprise. Environment Canada officials have confirmed that January was yet another warmer than normal month here in Thunder Bay. With the exception of a week-long cold snap in the middle of January, most of the month saw daytime highs or nighttime lows that were well above average. The mean temperature for January was minus 9.6 Celsius. That's 5.2 degrees warmer than the norm for the month, which is minus 14.8. And there was also less snowfall than usual, with just 30 centimeters compared to the typical 41. The ice cover on the Great Lakes was well below normal. Lake Superior reached a peak of 7% ice cover on January 19th, but has since dropped to just 3% as of yesterday. The normal for January 31st is around 20%.
Area residents are once again being asked to embrace the cold and dive into the frigid waters of Lake Superior for a good cause.
The 12th annual Polar Bear Plunge will take place at Marina Park on April 6th. Organizers hope to raise as much money as possible for 4 local charities. Jessica Clement has the details.
The Polar Bear Plunge is making its return this April, and organizers are hoping to make an even greater impact on the community. To keep things exciting this year, local businesses have been challenged to get on board and raise as much as they can. And event sponsor PDR Contracting already have a head start, as they've donated $20,000 to the cause. Plunge Chair Ryan Gibson says it's always great seeing the community come together for the 4 local charities.
I mean, last year it seemed like there was 1,000 people that showed up throughout the time. Not just the plungers, but family and friends, plus we were live streaming. So I'm not gonna lie to you, it's exciting. I always say this all the time, is that Thunder Bay has probably the highest rate of volunteerism in the country. And I think that just speaks how wonderful our city is, and it steps up for real events that help real people.
Last year, the 11th annual Polar Plunge raised over $150,000, which was double their goal. The organizers are once again setting that target at $75,000, with hopes of surpassing it. The money goes towards supporting the Thunder Bay Special Olympics, the CNIB, Pro Kids, and Roots Community Food Center. Pro Kids volunteer Hayden Johnston says the plunge has allowed them to make a significant impact on local youth.
Recently there in the fall, we were helping kids get equipment for hockey started, so we had several events where we brought kids in to get sized up for gear. If they were unable to afford the gear or didn't fit gear anymore, they could come and get new gear. So we were able to do that, and with those funds we are able to buy gear, help kids with registration, and get them involved with sports.
International student Nazrin Navas and her classmates from the Developmental Services Worker Program at Confederation College will be taking the plunge again this year. She says they were trying to find opportunities to help out in the community, and while the waters were freezing, the local impact was worth it.
It was also a motivation for me. I felt like as a DSW in progress, I saw the large number of people who share the same goal, and I felt confident that, I can now dream big, to make changes in the lives of people.
The TBT News team will also once again be taking the plunge. You can register online at thunderbaypolarplunge.ca. And for those who aren't up for jumping in freezing water but still want to support the cause, you can sponsor a plunger on their website. Jessica Clement, TBT News.
I think she just said it right there, Ryan. We don't have a choice.
Yeah. That was a lot of fun. I got to make up for last year. My head didn't quite go under, so
my bun stayed dry.
Yeah. Cannonball
this time. Got to be like Avery. And Haley, just turning our attention to weather. We're hope for these kind of temperatures on that day because it's going to be your first polar bear plunge.
Absolutely. As I've deemed myself to be hot weather Haley, I am trying to keep it that way for when the polar bear plunge comes because I'll need to chill out when that occurs. But for today, we had an interesting high of the day. Our high of the day yesterday was 4 degrees, and technically it was our high of the day as well. Most people didn't really get to experience that high of the day, though, as it occurred at 1 a.m. things slowly started to get a little cooler as around 7 a.m. we hit the freezing mark at 0, and then our low of the day was at 10 a.m. It was -6 degrees. So just as people were getting out for the day, that's when it was the coldest. But then we have warmed up to our daytime expected high of -1. As we look at the region, we can see areas like Red Lake, Kenora, and Dryden all had a cloudy morning today, but areas in particular like Red Lake have cleared up for the early evening hours. They're at -3 currently, Dryden at -3 as well. Fort Frances under some more cloud coverage at -1. Some colder areas including Pickle Lake and Nipigon right now at -7. Greenstone, clear skies, but -8. And both Greenstone and Armstrong experienced some light snow until about 10 a.m. this morning, and then they started to clear up. And then in Sault Ste. Marie, their high of the day was 4 degrees, and they actually got to enjoy that high as their high occurred at noon. But now they're starting to cool off. They're at -1 currently. As we look at Thunder Bay tonight, we will drop down to -13, feeling like -19 with the wind chill, but it will be clear skies and the winds won't be too significant, only about 5 to 15 kilometers an hour. So I don't know, this isn't polar bear plunge level, Ryan, but I do think that we are starting to have our colder evenings now.
Yeah, I mean, it had to happen at some point. It certainly didn't happen much through the month of January, as we heard a little earlier on. I'm still hoping that the temperature rises a little bit before we have to take that plunge in April. Thanks a lot, Haley. All right, some major news coming out of Alberta today. The Premier is making major changes to who can access gender-affirming care, and advocates are especially concerned. We'll have the details on that and more when your Thursday news.
I want you to also know that these policies will be implemented in order to protect the choices you have